Hello, everyone, and it's Sunday night. Welcome to Sundays with Shawyn. Tonight we have Emerson Brown, Eric Crump, Marlon Molina here as our guests to talk about our Cities Rise program as well as our zombie housing program. But before we connect with them, I just wanted to give you some updates around COVID. As well as last week, we had a show with Westchester Residential Opportunities and the Legal Services of the Hudson Valley, where we spoke about eviction protection monies that are available for up to 4 months, as well as foreclosure monies that are available up to 4 months. I want to let you know, please stay tuned because we have asked the county to extend the deadline from December 11th to December 18th, and we're going to talk about that. So please take a moment to share this video, share the video so that we can make sure this information is getting out to everyone. We want to make sure you share the video, so just take a moment to do that, and we're going to jump right into it. So as always, we're talking about COVID. And right now, Mount Vernon, as of Friday, December 11th, our COVID numbers for total cases since March stood at 3,828 cases. 3,828 cases since March. We have 294 active cases, 294 active cases. So what are active cases? Active cases are individuals who have tested positive within the last 2 to 3 weeks. And active cases means that these people are potentially still infectious. So active cases are people who have tested positive within the last 2 to 3 weeks. Our active cases were way up in the upper 300s before, and now they are down to 294. We're glad that the number of active cases is kind of decreasing in Mount Vernon, even though people are still testing positive, even though our total cases go up, our number of active cases has dropped. So that means the number of people right now that we are aware of that are still within the infectious range is about 294. We had 26 new cases reported on Friday. Mount Vernon, we are still not in a yellow or an orange zone. I want to take out the time to really thank my staff, thank our Essential Business Task Force, our Quality of Life Task Force, our COVID and Business Development Compliance team, because we are really, really holding with our numbers so that we have not found ourselves in the yellow or the orange zone. And then I really want to take out the time to thank the residents of Mount Vernon. We know that not everyone is following guidelines, but we believe that an increasing number of people are following guidelines. And so our numbers are not spiking as high as we've seen some of the other communities around us that have comparable populations. So Mount Vernon, continue to be diligent about social distancing, washing your hands, wearing your mask, sanitizing your areas. Continue to make sure that if you have a COVID complaint and you see businesses that are not enforcing the rules, that you contact our fire dispatch unit at 914-665-2626. They get that information to our COVID teams, and we go out and we follow up on complaints. And so Mount Vernon, this is not just about us doing this by ourselves. This is about us doing this together. We are looking to make sure that we keep our residents healthy and we keep our economy healthy, because the more that we're able to manage and keep our numbers low, the longer we're able to keep our economy fully operating, and people employed and tax monies coming in and businesses continuing to thrive. So this is not just a city effort. This is a full-wide community effort. If we have a low infection rate, then that means our residents have less likelihood of being infected here within our city. So let's continue to do this work together. I just want to, and Malcolm, if you can pull up the slides, I want to give you an update. As I said, last week we spoke about COVID relief monies. And so we know that COVID has been a very tough time. We've had a lot of people who have had decreased revenue from employment, others who've been laid off, hours cut back. You've had rising expenses of staying home and keeping the children home. That's extra food. for them, or maybe you're going back to work and you've had to pay for childcare for your kids who would usually be at school during the day. So we know it's tough times. Money is available to help with rent, utilities, and mortgage. There's eligibility counselors who are there to assist you, and time is of the essence. Go ahead. DSS is able to help with up to 4 months of arrears, utilities, and some security deposits. The governor just announced new funding. There's emergency financial protections, 1 month, including for people without documentation. And the city of Mount Vernon, we have emergency shelter grant funds coming up soon for up to 4 months of rent. So right now you can get through Westchester Residential Opportunities. We have requested that the county and WRO extend the December 11th deadline, which we talked about last week on the show, to December 18th. So we can't guarantee that right now, but we are pushing out for it. We will be able to let you know more this week, but we want you to continue to get your paperwork together. Send it in tomorrow, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and at latest get it in on Friday. We will advocate very hard with our county legislators, David Tubiolo and Teray Woodson Samuels. We will continue to speak with our county Department of Planning and our county and deputy county executive to make sure that if we're able to get applications in by December 18th, that our residents can still be assisted. And this will pay up to 75% of the landlord's arrears and late fees. So if you don't feel that you can get this for yourself, you can also let your landlord know that they can apply for this for buildings between 3 and 50 units. You have, in order to receive this assistance for your rent, you had to be current with your rent as of March 31st. And so you can put in for April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, any 4-month period within that time, you can ask for financial assistance, but you had to be current with your rent as of March 31st. You do not have to wait until you have an eviction notification or the moratorium is lifted. You cannot wait for that. You want to make sure that you're reaching out to Westchester Residential Opportunities as well as legal services of the Hudson Valley before December 18th and completing the full applications to get assistance. Next slide, Malcolm. So there is the same thing is available for mortgage relief. Again, this is only available through Westchester Residential Opportunities. They will help you with up to 4 months of your mortgage. So this is not about rent. This is about mortgage now. So again, homeowners, building owners, they will assist you with up to 4 months of your mortgage. You have to be current in your mortgage payments through March 31st. The hardship must be due to COVID. You have to be a resident of Westchester. It must be your primary resident. There's no income limit, and the applications have to be in. We've pushed for an extension to the deadline, so get these applications in again by December 18th. Do not wait, do not delay. You know, people were saying last week, well, why are we just finding out about this? Well, when monies are able to be made available, sometimes it's very quick. We got the information out. We're pushing for an extension. Do not delay. Don't complain. Get your paperwork in so that you could get assistance. Next, Malcolm. Like I said, they have support with financial assistance for rental arrears, security deposits, moving expenses, financial literacy. These are some of the other services they have available, assisting you with the court process, but you don't have to wait for that. If you have a mortgage, they can assist you with loan modifications. We know that mortgage rates are at record bottom and record lows right now, so ask for that help. And there's financial assistance available. Go on, and they have first-time home buyer assistance. Next, Malcolm. If you feel that you've been discriminated against when you're looking for an apartment or a home, Westchester Residential Opportunities will help you with that. They will send out testers to address complaints. And whether you own or rent, to address a disability need, they can give you grants for up to $25,000. So you can contact them at 914-428-4507. That information's at the bottom of the ticker. rental assistance at extension 305, mortgage assistance at 338 or 311. And then also legal services of the Hudson Valley. You can reach them at 1-877-574-8529. They're only providing assistance with rent eviction prevention. They do not have a mortgage assistance program, but they do have a rental assistance eviction prevention program. All right, so now we're going to go to our main guest. We wanted to make sure that you got some updates around COVID numbers and financial assistance that is available to you as residents for eviction prevention and mortgage. But now we want to move forward and talk about a program that will be kicking off in June. We received generous funding through our Attorney General's office, Attorney General James, back in 2020, and we're able to kick this program off now in 2021. And so I want to bring to you some of those who are going to be working on that program. Meet Mr. Eric Crump and Mr. Emerson Brown. Eric Crump will be working primarily on the Cities Rise program, and Emerson has been and will continue to work on the Zombie Homes program. So Eric, and there we go, Marlon Molina, he's our Deputy Commissioner in the Planning Department, working overseeing these different initiatives. So Marlon, if you could take a moment to introduce yourself really quickly, then we'll have Eric introduce himself, Emerson introduce himself, and then we will get into the meat of the matter around Cities Rise and the Zombie Home Initiative. You have to unmute yourself, Marlon.
Okay, good evening. I think so I'm having issues with my Wi-Fi, just to let you know. So I missed what you said. You want to do a quick introduction, you said?
Yes, if you could just take a moment to introduce yourself. Even if your picture freezes, we can hear you clearly.
You know, I'm going to pause. Move on. So I got to fix my Wi-Fi.
Okay, no problem. So we'll bring you back in when you're ready. Okay, so Eric, if you can take a moment to introduce yourself, and then Emerson, introduce yourself. And if Marlon's Wi-Fi gets fixed, we'll bring him back in.
We roll with the punches as it goes. So so I'm still somewhat new to the city, but my name is Eric Crump. I am in the planning department and starting up this new initiative, the Cities Rise, which, as the mayor mentioned, is graciously funded through grants from the Attorney General Tish James and some of our partners, enterprise partners, and the Ash Center for Technical Assistance and Guidance out of Harvard. And it's an initiative that is kind of repeated through some other sister cities to take a look at how we deal with code enforcement and how we improve the quality of life for citizens in the city, especially renters. So we can get into a little bit more, but I'll let Emerson introduce himself as well.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor, for having us. My name is Emerson Brown, and I am the city's Zombie Properties Coordinator. When we talk about zombies, we're really talking about home revitalization. A lot of times through the foreclosure process, homes are abandoned and are vacant and abandoned, and therefore left in a state that is not either pleasing to the eye or aesthetically good for the community. And so I am tasked to reduce urban blight in the city of Mount Vernon, and we have a number of ways we're going to achieve that, but that is who I am, and that is the focus of my program.
Okay, so if you can take some time out, Eric, to kind of just walk us through Cities Rise. We know one of the things that we know is Mount Vernon's code enforcement around bad property owners has been very lax for a very long time here in Mount Vernon. And unfortunately, because the city has not funded code enforcement positions, because we did not have the proper manpower to go out and really address building complaints, but not just addressing building complaints, because that means you're responding to a complaint. As the city, it has been our responsibility for years to go out and inspect properties annually or semi-annually to make sure before a complaint comes, that we as the city are identifying challenges and housing issues and housing violations. You know, years ago when I was director of the Housing AIDS program here in the city of Mount Vernon, I received my HQS inspection, which was Housing Quality Inspector, through HUD. And so I went out and I did housing inspections and you know, gave landlords violations, or before the city paid rent to these landlords, they had to fix the violations to make sure that our residents had a good quality of living. And we know oftentimes that the residents who suffer and have to deal with slumlords happen to be our poorer and our older residents, and those who don't necessarily know how to properly engage the system to get the relief that they need. And so there are absolutely landlords, and I'll say it, that prey on the poor, prey on the elderly, and prey on people who are too afraid to talk about the condition of their housing. And when you have no one to enforce the rules, people ignore the rules. When you have no one to enforce the city codes, people make up their own rules. And that's what we've seen here for a long time, because we've never funded those positions. And each year, you know, if no one is watching the fox is going to take more and more and more liberties. And that's what we've seen here in Mount Vernon for a long time. And so the New York State Senate did a report a few years ago that talked about housing quality standards in the state of New York. And I believe that Mount Vernon was either the #1 or the #2 community that had the highest number of violations in the state of New York, or had the poorest code enforcement here in the state of New York. And that's very real. So tell us how Cities Rise is going to begin to address some of those concerns, and who we're going to partner with to improve the quality of our housing and really support our tenants in getting fair housing opportunities.
Yeah, and I think you really hit the nail on the head. And this is, it's a problem. It's a cultural problem. It's kind of persisted and built itself through a lack of education and a lack of standards and a lack of enforcement. And it's not, you know, unique to Mount Vernon. There are other cities going through these same challenges in terms of fixing that broken culture of quality of life for renters. The biggest issue is the culture of substandard housing that has been allowed to persist in the rental market comes through tenants not knowing what they are entitled to in terms of the violations that exist and the things that are part of their essential core requirements that landlords must provide to them in terms of the places that they're renting. And as you said, the capacity and the energy and the consistency of the city of making itself available, getting housing inspectors trained and getting them out there in the community to respond to issues and complaints, and establishing a repeated culture of inspection at every single entry point. When a tenant is already in the unit and is experiencing substandard housing, whether it's leaky roofs or rodent infestations, electrical issues, appliance issues, privacy issues from the landlord itself. There's a whole host of things that landlords must provide to their tenants. So whether tenants are already in the unit, as they move out, and the unit must be re-inspected and brought back up to code so that it's a good, clean, quality apartment for the next renter who wants to come in. At either of those access points, we haven't been inspecting these units frequently enough. We haven't been proactive enough in inspecting these units, and we haven't been responsive enough to the needs of the tenants themselves. So the process here is to start with educational initiatives. And the first one that we will be rolling out in the next few weeks is a tenant's bill of rights, as I said, to make sure that every single person, every single resident in the city, whether they're a citizen, whether they're not a citizen, whatever language they speak, whatever educational level they have, or whatever income level that they have, that they know these are the things that you are entitled to in every single unit that you rent in the city of Mount Vernon, so that it's clean, it's well maintained, it's functional, there are no serious issues, and that it's a quality place to live in dignity, right? So you'll see some announcements and some brochures and some handouts and some flyers and digital media coming out to let every single tenant know what they are entitled to, including retaliation protection from landlords. If you are reporting something that your landlord is doing incorrectly, your landlord cannot punish you for that. They can't retaliate against you for that, right? A landlord set of training and workshops so that they understand that we are, as a city of Mount Vernon, intending on holding them accountable to all of these very same protections that they must give to their tenants, and that they can't skate through the system and they can't find a way around it and they can't evade it when it goes back out to court and delay it and make sure that it never gets fixed, because that's been the standard before, that they can find their way through to not have to bring their unit back up to code because they can find the cracks in the system, right? So cleaning up those cracks in the system. And bringing realtors into this as well. Realtors are another huge part of this issue. They understand that these are the standards that the city has set, and that they need to make sure that every unit that they list is being brought to code before it's listed, and every tenant that they're placing into a unit knows that it's been inspected, it's been cleaned, and it's ready to go, and it's a quality place to live, right? So how we do that is, first of all, looking at best practices, things that other sister cities have done in terms of increasing the capacity of code enforcement, getting officers retrained, equipping them with technology, bringing new things to the market so that we're reducing the lag time between the tenant and the inspector, and making sure that things are documented the right way and that they can be given to the law department, so that when we go to court, if we have to take if a tenant has to take his or her landlord to court, that they can actually win that case and make sure that things are either remedied or fines are issued, or both. Increasing the capacity of those inspectors, including making nights and weekends hours available so that we can get people in there, because a lot of our residents, can't get somebody in between 9 to 5. They're busy working, and whether it was before COVID or during COVID, a lot of them are still outside of the house. So increasing our capacity as a city to get inspectors to people during hours that fits the needs of the residents. Making sure that we have bilingual and language access for our inspectors, for people who can't, because like I said, it doesn't matter what language you speak, you're entitled to a quality unit to live in. And then bringing in all of the other parts of the city that deal with this. Collaboration, we've done a lot of internal trainings in the last couple of months to bring everybody onto the same page. Collaboration with the planning department, the buildings department, the water, the fire, the police, the law department. Part of the Cities Rise grant not only creates new positions for things like myself and additional housing inspectors, but also a staff attorney as part of the Corporation Counsel's office that can assist with making sure that they can assist with that backlog. Because the issue is, if we're encouraging residents to make sure that we're holding landlords accountable, well, we have to make sure that we're not also creating another bottleneck in the system where this is where they can evade it and this is where they can slow play it, and make sure that that things get drawn out. So we're trying to make sure that we're beefing up the quality and the capacity of our legal team as well as they go back to court. Technology. You'll see in the next few weeks, some of the other things that cities have done is a series of programs called C-Click Fix, right? C-Click Fix is a tool, an app that you can download on your phone that lets you take pictures of things that are in your apartment to document what's happening, and then collaborate and provide that back to the housing inspectors, back to the legal department, so that everything is seamless and works well. And it's a great tool that we've seen used in other places, Rochester and Albany, things like that, that makes it easier for tenants to say what's really happening inside of their units so that we can make these cases stick. We're planning to add some kiosks inside the neighborhood all throughout the city. That's another point of access where they can report things that they're seeing that are code violations, and make partnerships with some of our providers and advocacy groups. You can go talk to a counselor at the Dole Center and say, this is what's happening inside my unit. We understand a lot of Mount Vernon residents are still behind the digital divide. So we want to give you many different ways where you can access the housing inspectors and get those complaints reported, so that we can make sure that we're keeping all of the city's housing stock up to code. And then partnering with other agencies like Mount Vernon United Tenants, who also will be increasing their capacity through this grant, adding more tenant organizing individuals and bilingual tenant organizing individuals. What we found in other cities is a lot of times it's a few buildings, it's a few realtors who are doing the same things. And it's not just one bad unit, in an apartment. It might be 6, 7, 8, 12 bad units inside of one apartment. Those tenants can build together to advocate for their own interests and make sure that we're, using them all together and getting that partnership, that teamwork to keep our units well done. And then some of the other resources you've already seen. We've talked about Westchester the retail, Westchester Residential Opportunities, WRO, and the Legal Services of the Hudson Valley. There are programs like lead abatement things that we can make sure that we're cleaning up the quality unit inside there. And some of these programs are actually programs that will help both landlords and tenants. If you see something that needs to get repaired inside your home, you can access grant funds that can help the landlord fix it so that the tenant isn't continually dealing with that issue, and we're not financially harming the landlord as well.
So Mary Kingsley, just stated sometime, and like you also said, it's not just, hold on one second, it's not just bad, one bad unit. You have some really bad building owners and property owners. We have people who have made a business and a living off of preying on Mount Vernon residents, but also getting around the lack of, like you said, capacity that we had to keep up with inspections. And so I've seen and I've known, because I've been in housing in Mount Vernon for 25, almost 30 years. And I know that there are several, not just slum lords and building owners, but there are some slum realtors here in the city of Mount Vernon who really work with people who are identifying and looking to buy properties, and they help them identify properties. They help them get this paperwork through the system. Then they take one family homes and help them find ways to convert them into 2 and 3 family homes, or they'll take single or multi-family homes and convert them into SROs. So what we need to let people know here in Mount Vernon is Mount Vernon does not have a legal single residence occupancy area. That's not what we allow. We don't allow SROs. So if you're renting rooms and rooms and rooms and houses for $600 a month, I can tell you 99% of the time you're living in an illegal housing unit. And what happens in these illegal housing units, the landlords are taking your money. They're not keeping the properties up to date. When there are fires and the fire department has to go in there, there's great loss of property. You see rooms cut up. They have to go in there, and it's hard to even know how many people are in the house. We've seen over the years up to 24, 25 people living in a multifamily unit that's been cut up into rooms. And we understand there's a housing affordability crisis. And we understand that a lot of people feel like they have to live this way, but we have to find a way to make it better. We have to find a way to make it better. You cannot make these landlords and these homeowners believe that they can just stuff you into a house like sardines because you're desperate and you don't want to be homeless and live any other way, because that gives them power. And so we are excited that we're going to be expanding our capacity, adding code enforcement officers through a grant. We're also adding some code enforcement officers through our HUD funding as well to do this. And we have some code enforcement officers in the budget that we're going to get out there, because you can't be in the game and you can't win the game if you don't have anyone to play. And if you don't have anyone to go out there. So like we said, we're expanding our capacity to deal with slum realtors, slum building owners, and slum landlords. And then we also understand that there are some people who may not necessarily be slum lords, but because they, have experienced some financial hardship as owners, as property owners, that they may have a hard time keeping up to standards. And so if that is the case, then we need you to reach out to the city to see if the city has home funds or any funds through the planning department, through urban renewal, or if we can send you places that will help you find either a low interest loan or some type of grants to help you renovate and rehabilitate your properties. So if you're struggling as a property owner and you know that you're not able to maintain your property to the best standards, but you want to be a good landlord and you need some assistance in upgrading your housing, then please reach out to us. Don't let our first encounter be because we've either come there for an inspection or we've come there because a tenant has complained or the fire department or the building department is coming through to check out fire safety or building code violations, or you're putting in for a renovation application and we come in and find a lot of conditions that are not allowable, that should not be our first interaction. If you're really a good property owner and you want help, then please reach out and help and work with us so we can identify some help for you in helping you to be more responsible and to be a better property owner and landlord. So, and the other thing that you said, Eric, which is so good, is I think through this grant, this is the first time that Mount Vernon will have a dedicated housing attorney. A dedicated housing attorney who can go and work with our judges in housing court and work with our tenants and work with our tenants' rights agencies to follow through on these cases. And, you know, that's one of the areas, other than the code enforcement officers and the housing inspectors, where we've lacked that support. So we're just excited to have this along with See Click Fix and some other things. So we're going to come back to you. We're going to jump on down. Marlon, can you introduce yourself while you have a good internet signal? And just tell us, is there anything that we've missed? You have to unmute yourself because you're muted. Marlon? There you go.
Yes. Well, good evening, Meg. I'm very excited that you have Eric and Emerson for, you know, been talking about these programs for some time. And the services are sorely needed. I think that the city had to go through a process of understanding what was missing within their resources. And, you know, as you know, we work with university, the grants, to help us clarify what our objectives, our goals be. And just to add something that, you know, Eric did an amazing job explaining all of the services that we're going to offer, but we also want to make sure to note that the reason why we are working and we subcontracted with United Tenants is because a lot of undocumented residents who are victimized, often they offer those illegal apartments that you mentioned, which, you know, are ones that have enforcement violations, and many of them don't. You know, we learned last year that many of them don't trust government because, you know, they're undocumented, they're living in the shadows. And by partnering with Mount Vernon United Tenants, they're going to have an organization that can do advocacy on their behalf. One of the partners that I also want to mention is DHCR, Department of Community,
Department
DHCR,
of Housing
Department of
and Community
Housing and
Renewal.
Community Renewal, because if even, you know, any tenants who, yes, any tenant who is being harassed by their landlord can file a complaint. If if you suspect that maybe you've been overcharged rent, they can investigate that for you. The city does not do that sort of work, but we do have state agencies as well as nonprofit organizations. We had the services in the Hudson Valley. You know, these are key partners that the city has been working with, and it allow us to connect our residents to those resources. And just from a strategy point of view, if we take a step back, you know, the price program is geared towards helping those folks who rent. And you know, the zombie properties program is geared towards homeowners as well as vacant properties. Those vacant properties, you know, we use the word zombie, but there are properties well maintained either by the bank or an LLC, as well as, you know, a private owner. We're not out there to hurt homeowners. We just want to make sure that those homeowners or those LLC or those banks are not doing their maintain their properties. But I'm going to talk more about the you mentioned fix. So we're getting ready to launch Click Fix. I think that we want to make sure that the staff is in place, the code enforcement officers are in place, and we are the 2021 budget to get started. Have the funding, and, you know, we have identified we're in the process of onboarding 2 code enforcement officers And in January, we should be able to start for the third and the fourth code enforcement officers. So, we're going to be tripling
So you're breaking up a little bit, so I
the
just want to
housing
repeat.
inspector workforce.
You're breaking up a little bit, Marlon, so I'm going to just repeat some of what you said. You said we've already identified and we're in the process of onboarding 2 code enforcement officers, and in January we should be able to onboard the 3rd and 4th code enforcement officer. Again, like I said, that expands our capacity to go out and respond to complaints, to do different inspections and checks to make sure that landlords are doing what they're supposed to do. As Eric said, we've brought on a full-time housing attorney to really focus on housing rights and housing quality standards and addressing these issues, so that we could really deal with improving the housing quality and therefore the quality of life for our residents here in Mount Vernon. I always get complaints, oh, the building department is not responding quick enough. We're understaffed. I mean, I'm not making an excuse, but we have to talk about what the realities are. And when you don't fund positions, then it's hard for you to really do the work fully of that department. And so that's why between a combination of grant funds from our Attorney General James's office, a combination of funding from our federal government through HUD, and then a combination of monies that we're putting in the City of Mount Vernon budget that we allocated in 2020, but we have not been able to hire for. We're hiring those now so that we can move forward with improving the quality of life here in Mount Vernon, and that is just really key. And we look forward to working with the Division of Housing and Community Renewal to deal with landlord intimidation and abuse and harassment and discrimination, working with WRO, Legal Services of the Hudson Valley, as well as United Tenants of Mount Vernon. It has to be a partnership to ensure that we are really building a strong alliance to wrestle this whole housing quality issue that has gone unchecked for far too long here in Mount Vernon. And when I say that, I'm not throwing shots. These are not shots at former administrations. It's just the fact that, when you don't dedicate the money to it, it doesn't get done. And we know Mount Vernon has struggled as being an under-resourced government for a very long time. We're struggling. We always have to keep positions open. We're never able to staff at the full need because we have a tax base that is heavily reliant on residents. We have not been strategic and intentional and very good at expanding our industrial and our retail and our business tax base. And so, each year as fixed costs like medical expenses and insurance and things like that and union contracts increase, we have to constantly cut back on the number of people we have to do the work. So I think if people really go back and look 10 years ago, they're going to find that we have less staff in Mount Vernon now than we had to do the work 10 years ago, because we're not expanding our budget, but we are increasing costs that we don't manage, again, like health insurance and medical insurance and benefits. And we have to do that at the cost of decreasing staff and decreasing services. And 2021 is going to be a very difficult year because of the impacts of COVID on the revenue, as well as the impacts of COVID on the expenses like overtime. And we're going to see that continue into 2021. So this is going to be a very challenging year, but in the midst of all of that, we're still looking forward to launching this program and addressing some of these challenges. So I want to jump on over to Emerson. Emerson, can you talk to us a little bit more about the zombie initiative? Marlon did speak about it. We know that we have LLCs that own it. We know that we have families who own some of these zombie homes. When family members die, family members hold on to these properties and fight over them. But the hard truth also is that the City of Mount Vernon owns a good number of repossessed and in-rim properties. We have not had an auction since 2016. And so some of these properties that are sitting out there that are empty and not making any revenue for the city and can have an impact on some of these neighborhoods are owned by the city of Mount Vernon. And these are managed by the comptroller. And the only one who can really fully execute along with the real estate committee an auction is the comptroller. So Mount Vernon, for the last really 4 years, has lost opportunities to generate revenue for the city for the comptroller's lack of cooperation with the real estate committee to hold city auctions and get rid of and offload some of these properties that can be put back onto the tax rolls. So Emerson, can you talk about the Zombie Home Initiative? You know, what are we up against and what are we as a city doing and who are we partnering with to address the issues of zombie homes in our community?
Well, the Zombie 2.0 is a second phase of Zombie 1. It's really a home revitalization initiative, I would say, where the goal is to decrease urban blight in the city of Mount Vernon. The primary focus is to focus on 1 to 4 family residential structures that are vacant and abandoned. And as mentioned earlier, we're talking normally about bank-owned, LLC-owned, or privately owned properties. And the goal is to protect the people, the property, and the pride of the city. When we say people, we don't want young people and others going into these vacant structures and getting injured. Sometimes you'll have squatters that occupy these structures. So you're having a sanitation issue that's created that's adverse, and or a potential fire. If they're occupying the home in the winter and trying to stay warm, that's another opportunity for a fire to occur. And Mount Vernon has had its share of fires in the past. And when we're talking about potential crime, we want to eradicate that kind of opportunity within these empty homes where crime can be committed. When we talk about property values, buying a home is one of the biggest investments most people make, and we do not want to put in jeopardy a return on investment that our Mount Vernon residents are making when they choose to make Mount Vernon their home. And we're talking about the aesthetic value as well. I've seen properties where neighbors are coming home, a building has suffered a fire 3 years ago, and the property is still sitting in that state. And then we talk about community pride, how our residents feel about where we live. We refer to the jewel of Westchester, but we have to invest and protect it through code enforcement. And how do we accomplish that? Property inspections. Property inspections are, especially with the capacity issue we mentioned previously, there was a state report that said basically the ratio should be about 1 code enforcement to 10,000 residents. So if we look at our 2010 numbers on the census, over 67,000, that should be about 6 to 7 inspectors. So we need to increase the capacity, which we're working on. Letters are going out to the banks, the LLCs, to the private owners. With the hiring of the attorney, now we have some teeth, both with notification and then subsequent follow-up, so that the banks and the LLCs and others know that there's a potential fine structure that's going to come after a certain period of time once they've been notified. Another angle in terms of trying to reduce blight is the whole partnering with a WRO, which was mentioned earlier. Some of the population of homes that have fallen into blight are as a result of foreclosure. So if we can get ahead of the curve and help our residents avoid foreclosure through counseling, that's another strategy to reduce urban blight. So WRO, and then also we're going to be working on developing or resurrecting the zombie task force. Every property has a story, and whether we're talking about fire, police, assessors, building, through a software we call Building Blocks, each of these departments actually feed data into a central database that gives us a lot of information on utility usage and cause of fire and that kind of information. So we're actually going to work on resurrecting the task force so that we can focus on the most outstanding blighted properties, get a sense of what's going on, and address each one individually. And then, of course, through your office, Mayor, and through the City Council, with any legislation that can be brought forward that would champion quality of life standards, that's another way to address the problem. So that's basically the overview of the program and approaches we're taking to solve the problem.
So one of the things that I hear all the time from residents is, why hasn't the city torn down that burnt out building? Why hasn't the city torn down that foreclosed property, or a property that, might have been owned by a family and the primary owner died, and the family or children and grandchildren haven't done anything to keep it up, and they might have even abandoned the building. And like you said, there's been people who, based on the last financial fallout, they were underwater financially, and they abandoned their homes. And this is when we saw really a burgeoning of the zombie home crisis going back to 2008, 2010. So this is not a new issue. But one of the things that people say all the time is, well, then the city just needs to tear it down. The city needs to just tear the property down. And what they don't understand is, A, it can take tens of thousands of dollars to tear down each property. And then where do we get the money to tear that down? The city has to pay that. And if the family has abandoned the property, if it's hard to track down who the true owners are, if the owners are an LLC and they have different types of legal protections, we could always put a lien on the property. But if no one intends on claiming the property, then how do we as the city recoup our money? So that's one of the real and big and true challenges. Look, everyone, if it was such a simple answer, then you wouldn't see hundreds of zombie homes sitting around in our community, if the answer was that simple. But if we just went right now and tore down the zombie home on Union Avenue and 3rd Street and the one on 10th Avenue and 5th Street, those are two major burned out properties that I drive by every day on my way to work, on my way from work. I see them every single day. But that's going to cost, in order to tear those properties down, in order to clear those properties, tens of thousands of dollars, which honestly the city doesn't have. And then empty houses, we have to find a way, ones that aren't burnt down, we have to find a way to continue to put plywood on them, continue to chain them up, board them up, and keep people who are homeless from breaking in and becoming squatters. So it's a real challenge. Everyone has the answer until they have to figure it out and find a way to fund it. But I promise the community that if the answer was that simple, then we wouldn't have a zombie home in the city of Mount Vernon. But the answer is not that simple, and the way to fund it is just not that simple. We know it impacts the property values in our community, and it's very devastating. But it's going to take a lot of partners and a lot of money to really find the solution to this.
Correct.
So we had some questions. Yes, so one of the things that we're working on, we're talking about positions for next year. We've talked a little bit about COVID, Mount Vernon, and this is not necessarily to you. I'm just speaking to the people on Facebook right now. We're in budget season. The budget should be really going up before a vote, before the city council. We should have had budget hearings by now. It should have been voted on and adopted by the Board of Estimate, which I chair. By now, my commissioners were responsible for putting together their budget and giving me their budget by August, which they did. We came in on time. What we have not received to this date are usable numbers, usable, verifiable, adequate numbers coming out of our comptroller's office. She sent us some reports. Unfortunately, the numbers on that paper mean nothing more than blank sheets of paper. Those numbers come from absolutely nowhere. She has no ability to even back up those numbers. And for me to even try and begin to use any of the numbers that she's presented us with to put in the budget would be irresponsible. And so we've been asking for the comptroller to come and really sit at the table with us. She continues to hide behind lawyers. She continues to say that I'm not willing to meet with her. But she's run and run circles and continues to use excuses. We've offered that if she needs assistance in doing it, then we would be more than happy to work with her around this. But she's failed to do it. She even continues to lie and say that she did not work with me last year and I didn't work with her for the creation of the 2020 budget. But we have both videotape to prove that she says I worked with her. We have her own handwritten stuff on the budgets that she and I worked with together last year to create the budget. And it's just really, really unfortunate that she continues to create a false narrative. As the chief fiscal officer of the city of Mount Vernon, we would expect you to bring competent skills to the table to help us deliver the first on-time budget in years. We are dealing in a time of COVID, and budgeting in any year is difficult. But budgeting in a time where revenues and expenses have changed and been impacted by COVID, we would expect our comptroller to come to the table. But she continues to create a false narrative, the same narrative that she created and talked about, for the 3 years that she's been in office. So this is just my first 11 months, 12 months in office, but the comptroller has been the consistent problem since 2018. And she can't create a narrative that everyone else is incompetent, that no one else knows what they're doing, and that no one is effective in their jobs out of 20 different departments, including the mayor's office and the city council's office, but her. It is such an unfortunate narrative that is crippling the financial operations of the city. We don't know what monies we have and if we can even make it from week to week because we have no access to the 39 bank accounts except information on one. We have no access to the equivalent of QuickBooks, which is the Munis system. The comptroller continues to say that her system was breached, but we don't even believe that she's used the financial management system for the last 2 years. Again, it speaks to competence. It speaks to a game of hide the ball. It causes me to question what type of fiscal malfeasance is happening in her office. I know that our state comptroller continues to work on doing an audit. I don't know yet what they're finding in this second audit, but I can't wait for them to, put out their next draft report. It's really a challenge and it's very difficult, but we're looking to really sit down with the comptroller and come to the table with the comptroller, the council, and myself to complete a budget. It is necessary. If this city falls into financial disrepair, it will be no one's fault but Deborah Reynolds, the comptroller. As she says, she's the chief fiscal officer. She claims that she's keeping spending down, but no, that's not it at all. She just doesn't know what she's doing. So we're going to definitely make sure that in the next few days to a week that we come before you and we have a more detailed and full discussion about what we're dealing with here in the city of Mount Vernon. It will impact it has impacted up until this date, and it will continue to impact the services that we're able to provide. Someone asked a question about robocalls. Look, it's silly financials. It's silly season again in the city of Mount Vernon. And we know that people are ready to ramp up their races for city council and comptroller. I'm not running for mayor, but it's really interesting that there have been 4 robocalls on 4 Sundays now that all come out to attack me. It's unfortunate that we have people here in Mount Vernon who do not want to see Mount Vernon succeed. They do not want to see Mount Vernon succeed unless they are the people at the helm. So robocalls happen to cost at least $15,000, $2,000. And I think tonight there was a really long one. That one by itself probably costs over $3,000. I think that money would be better spent either them finding quality candidates to run and promote, donating that money to charities. There's a lot of people who are hungry. There's kids who want toys. There are people who need coats. But instead, you have some political underbelly here in the city of of Mount Vernon that just want to continue to swirl around in confusion. Guys, I hear the robocalls. I'm really unbothered and unmoved by them. It is disinformation. It is misinformation. It is straight out lies. And we survived these same robocall attacks. I know there were at least 10 robocalls during the election period. We are so sorry for the inconvenience. We've had seniors call crying, saying they just hate having to listen to these. They wish these people would take their number off the list. It's really, really unfortunate that you have to endure this. But again, like I said, we have a political underbelly in this city who wants to continuously poison the waters, and they do not want to see Mount Vernon succeed unless they are at the helm. I didn't respond to stupid robocalls when I was running for mayor, and I'm not going to turn around and spend money that I don't have responding to robocalls now. And so that's pretty much, all I wanted to say about that and the robocalls. And we're going to continue to do the work. We're going to continue to focus on the work. We're going to continue to build partnerships, and we're going to continue to work very hard to serve the residents here in Mount Vernon. And there will always be people who want to destroy any progress unless they can claim credit for it. Even as mayor, whatever happens good, I can't claim credit by myself because I'm working with people in all sectors throughout the city to make it happen. I'm not looking to be a kingmaker, and I'm not looking to destroy anyone in the process. So anything that you guys want to say, if you can each take 1 minute to kind of wrap up, because we have only about 4 minutes left.
Well, I would say,
okay, Emerson, go first, Emerson.
Okay. I would just say C-Click-Fix was mentioned. So as we talk about partnering with nonprofit organizations around mortgage foreclosure prevention, we also want to partner with the citizens and the residents of Mount Vernon. So that saying, when you see something, say something, you can kind of be the extension of our effort. If you see a vacant property, abandoned property, please let us know so that we can be proactive and get on top of any property that may or may not be on our radar. And so I would just encourage them to reach out and let us know. My email address is ebrown@cmvny.com, and the telephone number in the office is 914-665-2497. Thank you.
Eric?
And along that same note, I think I'm fortunate to be part of this team with Emerson and Marlon and yourself, Mayor Shawyn, Patterson Howard, in terms of bringing, Operation Better Living really to an actual reality. I mean, we start with slogans, we start with ideas, but as you've said many times, budgets are reflections of priorities, and this is a good, infusion of dollars behind all of these things that we've been wanting to do for a while. And that's to improve the quality of life, the dignity of life, the cleanliness, and really make this the jewel of Westchester, as you said. So right alongside with, Emerson there, my buddy over here, I also am E. Crump, like he's E. Brown. I'm E. Crump at cmvny.com. And we look forward to launching in the next couple of weeks and really building the capacity of Mount Vernon residents to improve the quality of their life.
And Marlon, is there anything you want to say as you end? Okay, that's it. So everyone, thank you so much. Again, remember, we're working with the county to extend the eviction prevention and the foreclosure prevention monies. There's up to 4 months that are available to help pay your mortgage as well as your back rent, as long as you are up to date as of March 31st. So please reach out to Westchester Residential Opportunities at 914-428-4507, extension 338, as well as reach out to Legal Services of the Hudson Valley at 1-877-574-8529. Everyone take care. Remember, we'll be back on Wednesday at 8 p.m. for our midweek update, and then tune into us next Sunday at 8 p.m. for Sundays with Shawyn. Take care, everyone, and have a blessed night.